The Consulting Success podcast is powered by the Clarity Coaching Program. If you'd like to work directly with the Consulting Success team and receive personal coaching and support to optimize and grow your consulting business, marketing, and revenue, visit consultingsuccess.com to find out more and apply.
Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business.
Hey everyone, it's Michael Zapersky, and welcome back to another episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. Today, I'm very happy to have Eduardo Placer joining us. Eduardo, welcome.
Michael, that pronunciation was extraordinary. It's exquisite. It's so rare, but so grateful to hear my name said in alignment with my people.
Listen, when I have a last name like I do, it's not uncommon that my name gets chopped up and diced into little pieces. So I figured we need to show up properly today and do our best. So Eduardo, you are a coach, you're a speaker, you're a community builder, you're a facilitator, you're also the CEO and founder of Fearless Communicators, which we're going to talk a lot more about. And this is your company where you help people to share their stories and amplify their voices. You've led workshops and spoken with groups at Google, HBO, Bank of America. The list goes on and on, a lot of well-known brands. And I want to kind of go back into where you got started, what you were doing before you built this business. But I figured today we'd just switch it up a bit. We have a lot of regular listeners that are used to like Michael asking questions about like, how did you get to where you are? Like, what did you do before you got into consulting? I thought, you know what, let's just change it up here today. And a topic that I thought we could start with is really around how you've structured your business model. So you are the founder, you are the CEO. You have, from what I see, a couple of program managers, but you also have a whole bunch of facilitators. So could you just walk us through what does Fearless Communicators at a business structure, kind of business model level look like?
And I love changing up the vibe and the jam. I'm totally down. What I do want to say is, and we'll go a little deeper into the origin story of Fearless Communicators, and there's the business need, but there's also the personal need as to why we show up in the world in service of people around their verbal communication skills and public speaking. But if we can get very specific, I was an actor for 15 years and I got laid off for the last time. So actors always get laid off. That's what happens. And whereas it was very cute in my mid-20s to cater waiter and to clean toilets at the dance studio and to bartend, I got to the point in my mid-30s where I was looking at the career of a professional actor and was uninspired. I was uninspired by the work and I was uninspired by the prospects of it. And I was gifted some insight by a dear director, colleague, collaborator of mine. What happened is that at this last theater company, I was at the premier repertory acting company in the US, which is in Ashland, Oregon. In Canada, it's like the Shaw Festival or Canadian TV show. Slings and Arrows is amazing. If anyone has ever watched Slings and Arrows, it's an amazing TV show that talks about the politics of a repertory acting company. So I was in that, but in the US's version, which is in Ashland, Oregon. And I was gifted with the opportunity to produce their HIV and AIDS fundraiser, which they gave it to me in year 26. So the 25th year had been this big blowout. And they came to me in the 26th year as a new company member. And they were like, do you want it? And I said, sure. And I took it from 6 events to 10 and raised 40% more than they'd ever raised. And I was like, I did a film festival in partnership with a local film festival. We had all the restaurants and bars donating on a specific day funds that would go to national and international HIV and AIDS charity organizations. So there was a way that I was showing up in the full expression of my gifts and abilities that was very different than how I was showing up as an actor. Learn your lines, know your blocking, execute the choreography, sing the song, etc. And at this theater company, it's called Black Monday. It's a day that you find out whether you have a job or not. I mean, there's always like, I may or may not get it, and that's a show tune, by the way, from the musical A Chorus Line. God, I hope I get it. I hope I get it. And I have an acute condition called show tunitis where I burst out into show tunes at the drop of a hat. So you just got a little bit of a flavor of that in this moment. Back at the ranch and back at the story. What this woman said to me, she said, you're a very competent actor. You're extraordinary at this other thing. And I was so ready to be in my extraordinary. And I think there are probably a lot of listeners that may be on their entrepreneurial journey, or they may have just pivoted, or they may be in a job that they're just like, their light isn't fully on, and they may be lacking that courage or confidence to just kind of jump in, to be in the expression of their extraordinary. And I think getting fired or getting laid off is a wonderful cause in the matter of stepping into that. But that's what I was gifted. I was gifted with that opportunity. And then I said, I'm ready to actually create something that's a full expression of my creativity and my gifts and my energy. And that's where I stepped into entrepreneurship. Now, I had been a public speaking coach as a side hustle to my acting career. So I had trained for a conservatory at UC San Diego, which is one of the top MFA acting programs in the US. All the actors there teach public speaking to undergrads. Loved it. And then I had it kind of as a parallel business, befriending board members at different theater companies. So I kind of had it as a side hustle. And then in 2015, made it what I call legal Zoom official and launched the business.
Let me just jump in for a minute then there, Eduardo. So you launched the business at that point. You've given us kind of some of the backstory, right, in terms of recognizing or just realizing that you have this genius, this talent, this area that you just really, like, you're shining and showing up amazingly well at. I'd love to just focus a little bit more on the business model or like the structure, because here you are today, you have this team. So let's just kind of work through this. How quickly did you go from it being you deciding you're going to start this business to starting to add on team members and building it beyond just yourself? How quickly did that happen?
It evolved organically and naturally, which is why I gave you the backstory of the business, because I didn't set out to be a business owner. I didn't go to business school. I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I was an actor, right? So I had to figure it out as I was doing it. And it's terrifying because the thing about being the business owner is at the end of the day, you're accountable and you're responsible, whether you know it or not. And that's a lot of pressure. So my first year in business, I did it by myself. I think I made $15,000 in my first year of business. Now I have a multiple six-figure business. But the beginning of it was very lonely. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I didn't even qualify in the United States for for Obamacare. I qualified for Medicaid. So it was dark. And I have an Ivy League degree in English from the University of Pennsylvania. So I was like, what? Thank God for the safety net, because it was there to support me. And I think what happened is that I always managed and held extremely positive relationships. So what happened is this HIV and AIDS fundraiser that I was at, the woman who was the executive director's assistant retired and called me up and she said, I loved working with you for the 2 years that you ran that program. I've just retired and I just want to work for you. So that became my first admin associate. Mm-hmm. Now, I think in a startup kind of landscape, it's kind of all hands on deck. And whereas in some ways, I think she was probably more framed as a traditional admin, I didn't need a traditional admin. I needed somebody who was more like a thought partner builder. I think one of the things that I've learned now that I'm 7 years into running my business is that what you want are great people. You can find a role for great people, right? So she wasn't great at the thing that I needed her for, but she was what I thought. I didn't know what I needed her for. She showed up and I had help and I was like, I needed help. So instead of saying you're not serving my needs in this one specific, like I didn't need someone to plan my travel. I didn't need someone to do receipts for me. I needed somebody to be 7 steps ahead of me and filling holes.
Mm-hmm. And was she able to do that, or did you have to go to, okay. Where did she, then how did you fit this person who clearly has talent into the picture?
So she is really great at a checklist. She needs a checklist. She needs things to do. And there's a whole part of my business, which was referred by a client, which is a client's business, which is interview prep. She managed the logistics, scheduling, planning of over 100 one-on-one private client sessions that we had to do that I couldn't schedule. But she just took that on because there was something that had a clear task, a clear objective, clear deliverables. And she was maybe working 10, 15 hours a week. So that was the first person who came on as kind of an admin support capacity. She recently fully retired. And then I started running programs. So I was still doing one-on-one work primarily with individuals, but then also, so our business is B2C, but also B2B. So there's a B2C business to client part of our business, and there's also a business to business part of our client. And I was doing all of it because I was the person who was leading the workshops, working with people privately. Then what happened is I did a group program, which called Fearless Force, Public Speaking for Visionary Women Leaders. We've done it now 25 times in New York, San Francisco, Tel Aviv, 3 cities in Australia. And I had an idea, which was, sounds like the beginning of my TED Talk, but I'm kind of joking. And then I had an idea. Anyway, I was looking at the landscape and I thought that the voices of women were highly underrepresented. And that didn't work for me or my politic. And I was like, can I create some structure that can support and contain the voices of women and give them the collateral that they need in order to amplify their voices and get to the platforms and speak? So I was running the program. I had 8 women on the pilot, and I was like, there's no way I can do this by myself.
So I have to stop you there for a moment because people are going to wonder if we don't cover this. And there's a lot of good points you just mentioned. One, which I think we should address real quickly or just kind of focus in on for a moment, is the importance of when you find somebody who's really great, but they may not be great for like that, the role that they're approaching you for or what you think you need. I think it's such a great exercise to have that conversation and to just try and see like, well, where could they potentially fit in?
Where could you fit?
Yeah.
Instead of thinking in terms of, it's very easy as an entrepreneur and a founder in your journey to be in scarcity mindset. And I think if there are people who are showing up and they want to help and they want to serve and they are aligned with values and they're hard workers and they're really good people that you can trust, there's work for them to do. It may not be what you think it is, but there's definitely work for them to do that can support you.
Yeah, for sure. There's an exercise that we've kind of taken or suggest to many clients. We do it internally as well, which is just to ask our team members, like, what are you doing that you absolutely love? And are you doing anything right now that you don't enjoy at all? Because if you don't tackle that, if you don't speak to that, then people are probably not going to show up the way that you want. But just doing something like that helps you to get people in the right place. Okay, so back to what you were mentioning, which is this pilot of 8 people. So my question for you was, I didn't want to gloss over, is how did you get these 8 people? Like, talk to us about the early days of your business. And then how did you even find people that are willing to raise their hand and say, yeah, I'll be part of that pilot program?
So I was doing a lot of networking. So I did a lot of networking. And I was a member of a group called BNI. I'm sure you have it in Canada. So Business Networking International. And what I love about that, and I'm still a member of a BNI chapter, is I love the motto giver's game. So I love the ability to show up in service. That business, I believe, is relational and not transactional. And that is my value and that is my principle. There are other people who have different values and there's room for everybody on the planet, right? But I like to do business with people who are relational and not transactional. And I know the feeling when I'm relating that way. So leaning on relationships and network, I had an advisory board at the beginning of my business. So there was someone who had a lot of experience in that startup founder kind of landscape. And I had some other trusted people who had like backgrounds in law or finance or other things that were people that I could bounce ideas off of. We met quarterly and it was invaluable in the early days of my business to actually own having to present, where are we? Where are we going? What's the vision? What are the numbers? Because I was running away from numbers as a words person. So there was an amazing co-working space in New York that no longer exists called the Center for Social Innovation. And it's specifically for social entrepreneurs. And I made a partnership with the space that they would donate the space. I paid a nominal price for the space. And we would feature, I think we got 7 or 8 of those. 6 of the 8 women were members of that. So they were tied to or connected to social entrepreneurship ventures within that establishment.
Let me ask just a quick question on that, because that's just a really ingenious idea, right? Like, you're looking for partnerships, you're looking for ways to add value and essentially leverage, hey, like, I'm going to be in this space. What could I give to this that doesn't necessarily cost me that much, but helps me to, like, there's a gain and win-win for both sides. Is that just your default mindset of you're always looking to find, like, because some people would be in that situation, but they wouldn't have the quote unquote guts or the mental kind of fortitude to go, you know what, I'm actually going to offer this to the co-working space that I'm in. Is that normal for you? Did you work up to that? Just kind of take us, like, how did you get to that place?
Very normal, very normal. And I leveraged a lot my relationship with co-working spaces. So, I did a workshop for a co-working space in Manhattan and they couldn't pay me, but they said, I'll give you a free office space. And they were like, great, I'll take it for a month. And I was working out of anywhere that I could get free Wi-Fi in the early days of the business. And I'm not someone who likes to work at home. So I like to have a place to go. So then they gave me the free co-working space. And then they said, we love you. We want you to be a brand ambassador and we will give you free office space. So for 2 years, I had free office space in Manhattan because I said yes, right? So I think when you say yes to opportunity and possibility and creativity and abundance, again, it's not what you think. I mean, I could have made a stink over the $500 at that time, which that workshop would have cost. I got a free office for 2 years in Manhattan. That is like insanity. And I created this program where I was going to all the different co-working spaces and I was meeting all of these other small business owners and entrepreneurs. I was also creating opportunities where colleagues of mine were becoming partners of other co-working spaces. So there was just a lot, like, in that space of generosity, karma, abundance comes back.
Could we also add to that? Like, let me know if you think this is fair to say, but you also put yourself out there. Like, you weren't just hiding in a safe office, like your own home, right? Hiding behind a computer, just sending some emails or doing some LinkedIn messages. You were actually out there meeting real people, which is, where you get feedback, where you build relationships again. Like, it's just so much easier to build a relationship. I mean, I know that there's some people out there, probably typically younger people, who are able to build relationships. I don't know if they're real or not, like with people through gaming, all this different stuff. That's not my world. I don't really understand that. But when you put yourself out there and you meet like real people, you tend to actually build relationships. It's much harder to do that through just a couple of messages. Yeah, online. So
I agree. And it goes back to the relational over the transactional. And I think that as somebody who specifies on verbal communication, I would offer that a conversation and communication is actually two people speaking to each other, not a tweet, not an Instagram, not a DM, not a text message, not an email.
Yeah.
That is a notification. That is not a conversation. In Spanish, there's a great term which is called dar la cara, which is give face. And I think we're losing the ability to actually be with and give face to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Then we're actually have to deal with the discomfort of like that, but there's magic in it. There's magic in that discomfort. On the other side of that is innovation, creativity, possibility. And there's so many ways that we numb ourselves from discomfort, but discomfort is actually not negative. Discomfort is actually necessary. And it's part of business.
Well, and also that idea of like, oh, you're lucky, or I was lucky, like to be in the right place at the right time. Just like if we break down that sentence for a moment, it's the right place. Like you actually have to be somewhere. You can't just sit behind your computer. And I think that's why people often find that it's just like, if you're not getting out, if you're not meeting people, then it becomes very challenging to see the success that you want, because you're not going to have the opportunities to create that quote unquote luck that people tend to have when they go to a networking event, or they go to a gala dinner, or they go to whatever it is, where you're surrounding yourself with other people and you have conversations, and all of a sudden that's where quote unquote that magic or the luck happens.
Listen, Michael, I had no money at the beginning of my business, zero, but I knew I wanted to build an international business. So right at the beginning of my business, I was given an opportunity for free. They paid for me and they fed me to go to Berlin to work at the Muslim Jewish conference. I'm not Muslim and I'm not Jewish, but I said yes to be in this international space, specifically working with social entrepreneurs who are at the intersection of multi-faith kind of projects. And then because I was already traveling and I was in Berlin, I had this opportunity to go to Kenya to teach LGBTQ plus activists that are on the front lines of equity work in these 5 East African countries. So I flew down to do that. I had a friend of mine that also happened to be there at the same time, who then navigated some connections. And then I flew to Bermuda to lead at a men's retreat, right? They didn't pay me to do the men's retreat. However, I got 2 private clients out of that opportunity, right? And the having gone to that Muslim Jewish conference in Berlin was a gateway for me to meet Israeli entrepreneurs, which led me running 2 of my programs in Tel Aviv, and then also getting a faculty appointment to teach public speaking at an MBA program in Herzliya in Israel. So it was all about putting stuff out there, being with people, serving a need, and trusting that the relationships and the consistently showing up, doing good work, honoring my word, being of integrity. And I call it in my work, being a lighthouse. Be a lighthouse, right? And I think there's all this gaming and algorithm noise and BS. And I think just be a good person, speak the truth, and beam your light and show up to serve people. And at the end of the day, that's going to attract it. All these people who are, they may have made a lot of money. I don't think they sleep at night.
Hey, it's Michael here, and we'll be right back to the podcast. But first, are you ready to grow, scale, and take your consulting business and marketing to the next level? If so, our Clarity Coaching Program may be a great fit for you. You'll work with our experienced team to set up a strategic plan for your business and coach you step by step in areas like how to consistently attract more leads, develop a magnetic message that resonates with your ideal clients, strategically package and position your services, earn higher fees, win more proposals, and scale your business. To find out more about Clarity Coaching and apply, go to consultingsuccess.com and click on coaching.
I think what we're talking about right now, Eduardo, is so incredibly important. It's not talked about enough. It is like the baseline, or just like a strong foundation or platform to build a business on. It's something that back in the day, people really understood, and more fewer people understand that it's all about meeting other people and having conversations and showing up. But I do want to ask you, because I think we could keep going deeper and deeper into this, but at some point you made a transition from delivering a workshop for $500, which you didn't get paid for, but you got an office space for. And that obviously blossomed into a whole bunch of other things. But at some point, you transition from doing those $500 workshops to doing workshops for tens of thousands of dollars or whatever it might be at very large organizations. Walk us through, what was that transition? Like, how did you kind of get, if it was the first break, or like, what did you to start landing some of those bigger named, bigger organization types of projects?
So several things. One, I have a vast network and I've leveraged my network.
What does that mean when you say leverage your network? Just more specifically, what does that look like?
So several things. I happen to, we use the word privilege, which sometimes makes people run for cover, but I think it's important to note it. There are many spaces that I don't have privilege, and there are many spaces that I do. I went to an elite preparatory school in Miami, Florida, that was run by the Jesuits, and I have an Ivy League degree from one of the top universities in the United States. Now, those people did not go into the theater. My classmates. Yeah, I did, but my classmates did. They went on to an array of different careers and things like that, and I reached out to my network of people who knew me and loved me and trusted me, and they brought me in. So some of those bigger named spaces I got into through a personal connection and a relationship, right? And they were not the ones that paid me, the $45,000, $50,000 contracts, right? I think what happens is, one is that in the early days of my work, again, I come from a profession where you get paid in gratitude and applause, which is the theater, where anyone would pay what people pay now to work with me. Whereas there was no frame of reference for that possibility. So one, it's time and reps of understanding and knowing your worth, and also trusting what the market will bear. And it bears a lot more than you think it'll bear, right? When you're coming from one, being an immigrant. So I have immigrant mentality and scarcity as an artist. So that's the first thing. And then also having people who are trusted confidants, who are in corporate and are in organizations, who will say, this is what people are getting paid. Because I don't come from corporate. They're the people who come from corporate, who come from organizations, who then transition and start their consulting companies, but they signed those contracts. They've seen those negotiations. They've seen those pitches. And there's a whole group of other people who've never been in the room.
You were told your network, the people that know you, that you have a relationship with, kind of updated you or let you in on what the rates are and what you could expect. And so that helped you to move to that next level. I want to go back for a moment when you talked about the network, the people that you know through your school and through upbringing or whatever it might be, that they went on to work at some of these large organizations and you went to acting. You mentioned that you reached out to them or kind of got in touch and they were then able to bring you in. What did you say to those people? Because I'd love if you could give as tangible, specific kind of language that you used. Because I'm wondering, were you very direct in terms of, hey, this is what I'm doing now, and do you know anyone that I can help? Can I help you? Or was it just more like, hey, let's catch up and talk? What were you actually doing in that type of situation?
I think the thing is, one, I run a public speaking coaching business, right? And the statistic is that 76% of people suffer from speech anxiety, and I believe everybody else lies. If you work for an organization or a team or a school or something, odds are people on the team are saying, I want support around public speaking. Or now the buzzword is story and storytelling. And that's what I do. So actually, what was so funny, talk about entrepreneurial journey, one of my earliest clients, my sister, was working for a consulting company in Boston. And they needed somebody to do headshots. And at the time, I was also a photographer. I was a portrait photographer. The first wedding I photographed was in Jamaica. The second one was in Colombia. So I came in and I did photos for everybody. And then they were having a meeting and they were like, we need someone to do public speaking. My sister was like, well, my brother can do that too.
The photographer over there? Yeah, it's also on his resume.
He has a terminal degree from one of the top MFA acting programs in the US. He has his public speaking coaching business. So one of my earliest jobs was in Boston for this consulting company. They're all Harvard MBA grads. And I had a methodology. I taught again at the university, and I was able to leverage that. And again, that's my sister. Not everyone is a relative, but some of my best friends on my advisory board, the guy that got me to go to the Muslim Jewish conference, we sang in the Penn Glee Club together. He's one of my dearest friends, and he was also on my advisory board. Mm-hmm. His cousin's wife was my first client. She runs a tech company. She's Chilean and lives in Israel now with her husband, and was in San Francisco as part of an incubator for tech entrepreneurs. And her imposter syndrome was on fire. And I kind of came in and worked with her. And she said, oh my God, you're the secret weapon. So then she started sharing me with this whole network of women founder entrepreneurs in the Bay Area. So part of that was, again, leveraging network relationships and letting people know, I have something to offer. Can you help? And I think sometimes we can be a little too proud. And I think you never know who is willing to show up to help. You have to ask. And you can ask more than once. I think sometimes we ask once and then we cower because it feels shameful. And people are busy. There's a lot going on in people's lives. And they forget and they want to help. And if you give them an opportunity, you'll be surprised who shows up. And don't make it mean anything if they can't. People are doing the best that they can. Don't take it personally. You never know. If people know, sometimes it takes 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Like I get messages of people, I've been following your journey for 5 years, and now I want to bring you into my company. I didn't even know they were paying attention on Facebook or on Instagram. But that's part of the consistency piece. Being a lighthouse.
They're huge. Yeah. Those are really wise words. And before we wrap up, I want to ask you one other question, which is clearly, or to me at least, it seems from what you shared today, Eduardo, that much of your success, of course, you do great work for your clients, which is why they keep bringing you back and they're getting more referrals and introductions. But from a networking perspective, it seems to me that you're very strong in building relationships and creating a powerful network. If there's one or two things that you feel is critical that maybe you see not enough people doing, like when you think about just an effective best practice or just an approach or principle when it comes to building relationships and a network that can help you to grow your business, what one or two things come to mind for you that you think that you could offer and share with others that they could benefit from and by applying?
I want to put a pause button on that question, but I want to go back to something that you've seeded and I haven't answered that answers this question, which is my entire team is relational. So my now lead salesperson was my roommate who I brought in to facilitate. We've been actors together at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival and was looking, and he's still acting. Then a woman in my first program loved the work so much that she then became one of my salespeople, the other group facilitator for the program. And so again, it is like nourishing the people who are showing up. There are people around you that are showing up, they're present, they want to help, harness that energy, say yes. And again, you can't buy trust. So I think that's the piece that you can't quantify it either. Right. So I would say the business has grown organically. My team they're either connected to the theater festival that I worked at, or they went to my alma mater, UC San Diego, for grad school. There's like maybe one or two people who came in because they were very persistent on other platforms to reach out and connect with us and build a relationship. So I want to answer that. So these are the two things that I would say to go back to your question, Michael. Then thank you for letting me.
Thank you. It was there. And then we kind of went down this other rabbit hole. So I appreciate you bringing it back.
Yeah. The most important piece, and again, I didn't make this up, this comes from BNI, is giver's gain. Meaning, and John F. Kennedy, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Right? The famous quote is when you are meeting people, be very curious about what their needs are and solve their problems. You want to be a super connector. What happens is I know a lot of people. So if I'm having a conversation with a client and I find out that they're moving, I was like, do you need a real estate agent? Or I'm talking to my client and they are acknowledging that there's something new that they're creating. I was like, do you have an intellectual property attorney? I'm listening to my client and they're saying, I don't know, there's something happening with my business. I was like, do you have the right accountant? So if someone's getting a divorce, I have a divorce attorney. If someone needs a dentist, I have a dentist. Anything that anybody needs, I have a way of helping them out. And I am in different social circles and social places where someone's like, there was someone who posted somewhere, does anyone know of a magician that can do an event or whatever? And I was like, I've got a magician. Like literally and it's because I'm listening to people, I'm connecting with people, and I have an internal Rolodex where I can do this leveraging. And what happens if you think of other people and you remember them, they will then remember you.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. And I think it's very easy in early entrepreneurial days to make it about the transaction. You have no idea who that person is. You have no idea who they know.
Mm-hmm.
There's a woman during the pandemic, in the early days of the pandemic, I started doing this event called the Big Gay Sing Along, where I just gathered people together and we sang show tunes and Disney songs just to kind of move through that collective trauma of what March and April and May of 2020 looked like for people. And this woman found me through Eventbrite and started showing up to these things. Then she started coming to my event over the course of 2 years. And then she brought me into her foundation. And I just did some extraordinary work with some amazing organizations for quite a pretty penny. And it took 3 years to nurture and build that relationship over time for something that was completely and totally unrelated that landed that. And now they're moving to an executive position at another foundation, and they're going to bring me to do that work too, right? So it's a long game. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. The last piece is we all have ideal clients. Show up where they hang out.
Anything else you want to add to that? More specifically, any quick example before wrapping up here on?
So for example, for me, my ideal client is probably someone who's invested in themselves before. Your public speaking coach is probably not your first investment. Odds are you have a health coach, you've had an executive coach, a leadership coach, a presence coach, a therapist. So you've been at work. So being at places where coaches and people who are involved in personal life transformation is a great place for me to go. So any kind of transformational kind of program, I'm about to go to Tony Robbins Business Mastery, right? Because it's a great place to be. And also my ideal client is in that room. I have several clients that are platinum members of Tony Robbins.
That's such an important question to ask. So everybody here joining us right now should be asking that same question: is where do your ideal clients go? Where do they hang out? Where do those that interact or serve or work with your ideal clients, where do they go and build relationships with those people?
And ask your clients, where are you going? If you have an amazing client and you're like, I love you, you want to know, where do you hang out? Where do you meet people? Where can I be around more of you? And again, a lot of my clients are entrepreneurs, small business owners. So they're whole hubs and communities of small business, and they travel all over the world to these hubs and they gather. And I don't have to show up from a transactional perspective and say, I'm here to sell you, but I'm also a small business owner. And now I'm in the space. One of the spaces that has been a huge source of connection is through this community. I just went to Rwanda. I was in Africa for 2 weeks. I was in Rwanda for 2 weeks, and it had nothing to do with business. It had everything to do with understanding our world and how a country repairs and reframes post-genocide. That's what I was there for. Now with me, people who run marketing companies, people who run tech companies, people who are NASA scientists, people who are in social entrepreneurship. So at the intersection of really extraordinary people is the opportunity for abundance.
Yep. All right, Eduardo, I want to thank you so much for coming on here today, joining us and sharing some of your story. There's so much more that we could go into, but we'll leave it here. And I want to make sure that people can learn more about you, about your company, really see kind of what's going on with your team and all the different programs that you have. So give us the website or the best place for people to go to connect with you or just learn more.
Brilliant. The best place is www.fearlesscommunicators.com. I'm sure you'll have some link or some option. And I have this wonderful little resource. I'm sure it's not the first time going to a website and getting a resource, but I'm really happy with this one. It's called 12 Simple Steps or 10 Simple Steps to go from a speaker to a star. And imagine it like Jiminy Cricket next to your shoulder, just saying lots of positive, loving, affirming things to you. There's no such thing as private speaking. So all speaking is public. So if it's coming out of your mouth, it's public. And odds are the majority of people have fear around that. So it is of service to that.
All right. Well, we will link that up in the show notes. Again, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.